Hi, I'm Liz Grace Christie, your oddball astrologer, here at your service to deliver you a lecture on an oddball topic, Ophiuchus. I have decided to coin Ophiuchus the 13th frequency, something that came to me throughout the creation of this lecture. We'll explore why I have coined it the 13th frequency as we go through this. But for now, I would like to start with inviting you to relax and allow your imagination to take hold. This is not a traditional lecture. It is one that is alive. I am a student of Rudolf Steiner, the mystic channel, and very intelligent, scientifically worded and spoken mind of the late 1800s to mid-1900s. Rudolf Steiner believed that truth is something to be experienced, and that truth is something that is living. So, in the words of Rudolf Steiner, truth is not revealed ready-made. It must be continually won anew. I would like for you to allow yourself to experience this lecture on Ophiuchus, the 13th frequency. I thought it would be fitting and helpful for you all to see what a 13th zodiac sign chart looks like, if you haven't seen it. I'm sure some of you have. It's a chart that cannot be neatly split up into 6 equal pairs. It is a chart where you see the sign of Scorpio gets reduced down to about 4 degrees. Ophiuchus takes up a bit of Sagittarius, and it is through this 13th zodiac sign reading, because this is my chart here that we're looking at. I got it back in 2021 by a woman who goes by Raw Goddess Astrology. I discovered that I have an Ophiuchus moon natally in this 13 sign chart. In a 12 sign chart, I have a Sagittarius moon, and I have a Sagittarius sun. In this chart, I have a Scorpio moon. A Scorpio sun. I made the cut. I made the cut in the 4 degrees of Scorpio according to a 13 sign chart. Do with that what you will as we move forward. So, this lecture has a lot to do with perception. Yes, it is Ophiuchus, but it is perception. Perception is the backbone of this lecture. Why? Because I'm sitting here talking to you on a 2-dimensional screen as a 4-dimensional being who can perceive a 3-dimensional reality. How you're perceiving me now is a lot different than how I'm perceiving this experience. I'm 2D to you, and you're all completely invisible to me. But that doesn't mean you don't exist. Just like how Ophiuchus totally exists, even though it's not included in the traditional 12-sign zodiac wheel. I wanted to share a little story to ground us in Ophiuchus because it is so enigmatic. In this story, it's a fun one and it's short. So the other day, I had some friends over. We were all making sock puppets together, which is something I do weekly on Tuesday. It's called Sock Puppet Tuesday. Yes, a bunch of adults come over to my house and we craft for hours, and we put on Jim Henson movies on the television to keep us inspired and to keep us goal-oriented, because in my opinion, Jim Henson's puppets, or rather the company and factory that was working with him creating puppets, are the best and my favorite. I miss puppets. They should have more puppets in movies. Anyways, we were making sock puppets, crafting, having fun. And my friend starts saying that this sock is the color red. And everyone in the room is disagreeing, because that is definitely an orange sock. We're all saying, it's orange, it's orange. And then he goes, the person that sees it as red, I am shade impaired. And we're like, what is shade impaired? He's like, okay, I'm colorblind. He's colorblind. But he prefers shade impaired because he can see color. He just sees a different hue, a different intensity. So one thing that's fascinating is that about 10% of the world's population expresses the gene for colorblindness. It affects about 1 in 12 men, and it affects about 1 in 200 women. So it's something that men express more than women. But all things aside, 10% of the global population is affected by colorblindness. So that says that 10% of the world's population doesn't see color, or at least the colors that we, the other 90%, perceive. But that doesn't mean that they don't see color. They're not colorblind. So, with that being said, the enigma of Ophiuchus. Ophiuchus is the colorblind 10%. It is a sign that has been having to hide in the shadows and pretend like it doesn't see color or exist, just for our modern perception of reality to exist. And I say this because it encompasses the number 12. It encompasses the number 13, one step beyond 12. And the number 13 isn't a clean, even number. It's a prime number. Whereas the number 12 is a even number. And it is a sacred even number that we find encoded throughout the matrix of our three-dimensional reality and how we measure it. 12 months, 12 hours, 12 Olympians, 12 apostles, 12 fundamental particles that declare the building blocks of material reality as we know it. Carbon 12, the most stable isotype of carbon that consists the majority of organic matter as we know it. 12. It's everywhere. It's also a number that is limited to the three-dimensional reality. If we break down the number 12 in numerology, that is to take 1 and 2 and add them together, we get the number 3. The number 3 is a very holy number, wildly holy number, because the number 3 carries the energy of change, evolution, and the witness. Why? Hear me out. When two opposites meet, male and female, and become one, the fusion of them creates space. In physics, one single point just is. When we take another point, we have a line. Now we have two-dimensional reality. And now the third creates the perception of depth. To add an esoteric layer to it and a poetic nuance, when two opposites come together, they wouldn't know that they were even opposites unless there was a witness to tell them the difference, or rather mirror the difference. 3 points. 1, 2, 3. These points are always pointing to something. And what are those points pointing to? Well, for my exploration, it's a sum 1. Exactly. It's the sum of 1. 1, 2, 3. 3 is a prime number. You can't divide it into 2 equal halves. What you can do is you can divide it by the number 1, and almost by some miraculous mathematical miracle, you get 3 again. So 3 is inherently linked to 1. It is the mystery of the Holy Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, or whatever have you, male, female, child, existence, relationship, witness, whatever. 1, 2, 3. 3 is also a number that is divisible by 12. A prime number that is divisible by 12. Neatly and clean. So with this all being said, that is the mystery of the Trinity in the number 3. It is a mystery that implies duality through unity. 3, being an energy of change, evolution, is implying that there is a fusion through the coming together of forces. There is peace to be made through the union of opposites. This is the challenge that 3 brings. Because in my mind, 3 also resonates with war in its lowest octave, which is something in our current zeitgeist we are dealing with globally and collectively. I wanted to get back into the grounding of the 12 sign system. So this is my zodiac chart. It might look a little intense because I work with a lot of asteroids and different fixed stars, like a lot of you who practice galactic astrology. One thing I learned recently is that my north node around the 22nd degree of Sagittarius is actually conjunct the fixed star Rosselhog, which is the brightest star in the constellation Ophiuchus. And like I said, I literally just found that out maybe 3 months ago, which is also interesting, and talking about this concept of living truth and the ability to trust our intuition on things that we are facing in the coming years. We are in a time of transition, and it's a time that the Hopi tribe from the American Southwest prophesized so long ago that we are splitting into 2 timelines, 2 realities here on Gaia. And I would argue that we are already there. That story I shared about my friend who's colorblind, 10% of the globe already doesn't perceive color the way that the rest of the human species does. We don't need to talk about animals. I know we're animals, but anyways, we're talking about humans here. And with that being said, there's 10% of the globe who, in my opinion, is using Earth's resources in a way that is advancing to a small amount of the population on Gaia, whereas the rest of the 90% are not advancing along with the use of those resources. And what I mean by that is that I'm talking about artificial intelligence. So when the Hopi received their prophecy, a few in their tribe were guided by star beings, higher beings, interdimensionals, to go underground. They went underground and they waited out the storm. That storm was a storm of earth, wind, fire, and water. The storm we're facing right now is one of minerals. The minerals that they put in technology are the minerals that we find in our own bodies. Silica, for example, which is used in computer chips to save data and memory, we can find in our own bodies. And in my opinion, I really like technology. Like, I'm here being able to share my thoughts with you all right now, which is amazing. It's in some ways a companion, right? Like, technology as a good companion allows us as human beings to grow. That's what a good friend does. You grow with your friend. Where I'm getting at is that it appears that there are beings who are growing with technology at an advanced rate and then leaving the majority of the population in the shadows, not inviting them to the party. Kind of like Eris not being invited to the wedding party. But unlike Eris, Ophiuchus is not going to show up to a wedding party they were not invited at and throw a golden apple. Ophiuchus will sit patiently in the shadows. Ophiuchus is Medusa, the rejected dark feminine, outcasted by Athena, a goddess who, in my opinion, represents the new female canon within the patriarchal archetype, or rather patriarchal society that we are all currently in, but transitioning out of. Ophiuchus is the poison and the cure. And Ophiuchus is something that we are moving towards perception of as we attune to the 13th frequency. And how we do that is through our hearts and our crowns, through our intuitions, and through our ability to be one with what is outside of us and what is inside of us. The Trinity is within us. It's not outside of us. The number 12 is a number that is perfect for this three-dimensional reality. That is why we find it everywhere. That's why it works so well in our 12 sign zodiac charts. In this reality, where things are dual, where there's this and there's that. There's us and there's them. And the only way it's ever going to unify is through us accepting ourselves as a global reality, as one whole species evolving together. I don't think that anyone listening to me right now will, in a three-dimensional way, be able to perceive the 13 sign zodiac system. And we won't do that as a collective right now. I think it's totally acceptable to incorporate Ophiuchus and the use of it through the fixed star Wasselhog, which is right here. But I don't think we need to be like all up in arms about how to understand it in a logical way, the 13 sign system, because we're doing fine right here, right now, where we are, where we perceive in duality. But it is through that duality that we can find that center point, that prime number, and use that prime number as a jump into the next higher octave of wherever. And I would like to bring up that in Demetra George's book, which I have right here, Asteroid Goddesses, she speaks on a time where there was one last zodiac sign. And I would like to read a passage from her book now to help you understand where I'm getting at here. Oh. Without further ado, Demetra George's Asteroid Goddesses. And you can find what I'm reading in the chapter on the goddess Vesta. So here we go. In the original zodiacal belt outlined by the Assyrian and Babylonian cultures, Scorpio was symbolized by a serpent and directly followed the sign Virgo. What is today Libra was contained within the constellation Scorpio and was designated as the chale, the claws of the scorpion. The Virgo and Scorpio glyphs were similar in design, but contained subtle distinctions. The Virgo glyph, the M, matter, mother, was turned inward, while Scorpio, M, matter, mother, was turned outward. Hence her reign of supremacy. The ancient great mother goddess simultaneously manifested as both Virgo, virgin, and Scorpio consort. Only with the ascent of the patriarchal culture was Libra, sign of marriage, placed between Virgo and Scorpio by Greek astronomers whose society created an artificial duality in women's sexual identity. Interesting. What that says to me is that once upon a time, there was an odd number of signs in the zodiac wheel. And during that time, the great mother goddess reigned supreme. It wasn't till the sacred number 12 reality, the sacred number 12 frequency that we are all currently existing in and perceiving at, came in and divided us into two differences. And therefore, the rise of the patriarchy occurred. So, duality implies masculine, in my opinion, where one implies feminine energy. 13 is an odd prime number that cannot be reduced into two clean halves. The feminine cannot get reduced into two clean halves. It's chaos in its essence, right? Do you see where I'm getting at? What I'm saying is that for our children's children, they're moving into a reality that is non-dualistic. And we are the pioneers of that right now. Through the observation of where we're going right now, through our heads, we can tap in to the space-time reality beyond it through our practices of going inward and being still. This is the difference between the words outer space and inner space, right? In my opinion, it's ridiculous to think that the only way that we can traverse outer space is through a material object. There is ways to traverse outer space through our abilities to go inward and connect with the multidimensional realities that exist within every single human being on this planet. So what I'm saying is that we're all being met with the opportunity to attune with the 13th frequency here, right now, in this reality that's obsessed with the number 12. Because the number 13 is the next octave up to higher and higher dimensions. With all this being said, I think it's important to be aware of where we are. That's why I feel like perception is truly the backbone of understanding Ophiuchus. Understanding where we are as a species, understanding how we perceive things as a current species in whatever culture we are in on Gaia at this time. It's important because it's influencing us. And it is through the understanding of perception that we can move our perception to higher frequencies. We are moving into a time that is more akin to that of the era that Demetra mentioned in her book, Asteroid Goddesses, and to that of Lemuria. And of course, Lemuria was a feminine, dominant culture. And I wouldn't be surprised if they, on their ecliptic, also experienced an odd number of signs. But of course, that is my speculation. I ask you to use your own intuition, imagination, and heart to understand for yourself. Don't take my words. Take your words. You are the sum of one. All right, y'all. For my freebie, I decided to give you guys a PDF of a pendulum board. So I'm a textile artist, and this is on a piece of canvas. The one I'm giving you, you can print out and use for yourself. But it is a drawing essentially with some energetically encoded and powerful symbols on it, aimed to help you tap into your intuition. You can print it out and put it on your wall. You can print it out and put it on your wall and take it off your wall and use it as a board, whatever calls to you. Either way, I so appreciate you all